Okay, here we are about 60 miles southeast of Las Vegas, near Lake Mojave, at a place called Nelson's Landing. And this is where, on January 23rd of 1995, in the middle of the night, some fishermen were walking back up after it started raining, and they walked up in this area, found Ron Rudin's skull.
Well, it seems like the case was being actively investigated, but nothing was coming forward until his remains were found.
They found a burned area over here that looked like some bones had been burnt there.
When the cops came to tell me about Ron, your mind can't take so much at one time. They had said that Ron's skull had been found, that he was dead, he'd been shot. I was in shock.
Well, that was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, you know, to think of him that way.
So, Greg, what else was found up there?
Okay, well, Ryan, you're standing by where they found Ron's remains, most of them, and then up here was Ron's gold bracelet. And it was unique because it had his name Ron, R-O-N, spelled out in diamonds.
And that bracelet was Ron Rudin. There it was, Ron, written right on it.
Now, when they found the skull, it had 4 bullet holes in it, 3 in the back, and then 1 from the front. They identified the skull as belonging to Ron Rudin because the teeth on the skull were still intact. They found the burned out old trunk. There was some belts, metal belts that had wrapped around the trunk.
What we believe is the body in the truck had been placed there on the hill and that it had been burned.
If you go and look at the way it's all laid out, it was a signal, a sign. It was left there to tell a story. The skull, the bracelet, the Cadillac, it's all left there intentionally. You know what, it's an old mob movie. They automatically assume when a spouse is killed, the other spouse is guilty. Of course they should have investigated Margaret, but their total focus should not have been on Margaret.
And that trunk they found at the crime scene, they're convinced it came from Margaret's antique shop.
The trunk did become crucial because the hardware was said to be from a humpback trunk. We believe there was a receipt that came back to a humpback trunk in her inventory, but there was no humpback trunk at the store.
So I'm thinking about Margaret. She's slim, maybe, I don't know, 120 pounds.
Right.
In your mind, would it have been possible for her to dump the body here?
I don't think so. I think it would be difficult for a strong man to do it because you're talking about way up there on the hill and then dragging everything down.
I don't think that Margaret could have loaded the body in a trunk by herself. I think there was someone that helped her.
And they come up with her supposed boyfriend, Yehuda Sharon. So what they do is put both of them under surveillance.
The theory was that Margaret shot him while he slept, and that she called Yehuda and asked him to help.
He had rented his van, and he had taken the back seat out. And therefore the theory was that somehow Margaret got Sharon involved in moving the body.
Sharon's story was he was going to go to his part-time job in California. He ended up turning around and coming back to Las Vegas.
When you look at how much mileage Sharon had put on that rented van, could his story that he went partway to California be true, or did he go to Nelson's Landing? Either's possible.
Yeah, Mr. Sharon had an alibi.
He claimed he had nothing to do with it, and his girlfriend at the time told investigators that she was with him the weekend that Ron was reported missing. It all checked out.
There's no proof of Yehuda's involvement in this. He portrayed this as a witch hunt, you know, that they were out to get Margaret and he got sucked into this.
I have no proof of that. I'm convinced that he had far more knowledge than he let on.
You can see how they looked at things and they tried to fit it in their narrative. Oh, well, she has an antique store. He rented a van. Oh, he must have been involved in it, even though he had an alibi for the time.
As the police were investigating and honing in on Margaret, they got a phone call from a handyman who told a remarkable story.
Augustine Lovato tells investigators how he was hired by Margaret Rudin to clean up their home. That information would actually lead to Augustine Lovato receiving a $25,000 reward.
He came forward and talking about all this blood that was found in the bedroom and all the alterations of the house that he had been asked to do.
He would tell investigators he also notices a red substance sort of gurgling out of the bathtub, which he also thought potentially was blood.
When he talked about, he could hear this gurgling. It's a drain. You put it in, it drains out. You can find blood afterwards, fine, but it's not going to be gurgling 4 days later or an hour later.
Well, it's awfully strange that your missing persons detectives were out here. They didn't see any blood. How did Lovato see something that wasn't there however many days before?
She hired Lovato to remodel the bedroom, but Ron was still just a missing person at that time. It wasn't a homicide case.
He tells police that while Ron was missing, Margaret hired him to make some changes in the house.
I wasn't renovating the house. I knew I was going to need a way to make a living if he didn't come back, so that I could support myself. I decided I could open a tea shop that I had already talked to Ron about, and everything in there was going to be antiques that I could sell. I wish I'd have been able to do it. It would have been a success. The trustees had left me with no choice.
They cut off Margaret's money. She was getting a small paycheck from Ron's business. They cut that off.
The trustees named in Ron's will justify it by saying they're simply carrying out Ron's specific directive, that no one gets any money who caused his death by violent means.
It was really, really petty. After Ron's disappearance, they immediately took over the trust. By New Year's Eve, they had already cut me out of everything. I no longer have my shop in Ron's property, so they were letting me have a message. They were in control, and they intended to make me penniless, and they succeeded.
There's no forensics that ever puts Margaret involved with Ron's death.
As the criminal investigation continues, almost 2 years since Ron's murder, something happens. The one piece of physical evidence that investigators desperately need miraculously shows up.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.